What's going on, everyone? So, according to Zach Lowe, the Toronto Raptors are a team to look out for. They may end up being sellers at the trade deadline, or maybe even sooner if they could find the right deal. So, what exactly he had to say was that underwhelming start has rival front office executives watching to see what Masai Ujiri will do with the underachieving bunch. Ujiri is known for taking big swings when things aren't going how he wants on the floor. He also adds Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. both have player options for the next season that they are expected to opt out of. If one or both aren't seen as part of the future, Ujiri could choose to get aggressive on the trade market. So again, the Toronto Raptors, they're a team just kind of built on a bunch of, 6'7", 6'8" to 7-foot guys, right? They're trying to embrace the switchability and just kind of like no position basketball, right? You got a lot of point forwards, a lot of guys. Obviously, Pascal Siakam has just been a monster for them. He's clearly their best player, but he's only getting older. OG Anunoby, they're going to have to pay him at some point. And they have a bunch of these young guys, but they haven't really been able to piece it together, right? They don't really have enough firepower. Their offense is just kind of really clunky at times, and they go these long stretches without even being able to score. Even in the playoffs last year, like that was a big problem. Like there was games where like playoff series where like they didn't even go, like they'd go 5 minutes without a bucket. And it's just because they don't have like really reliable shooting. They don't have guys that can just, go and shoot from the mid-range, go get all their buckets are, set up plays and they're clunky at times. And it's just because they just basically have a bunch of the same type of players. They got a bunch of like, tall 3-and-D guys, but none of them are really like elite 3-and-D guys, right? And they're all, for the most part, a very young team. Who knows what they'll look like in the next, 4 or 5 years. And, Fred VanVleet, he's hot and cold at times. Like sometimes, some games, he just seems like he's, the best point guard out there. And he just is killing it and, knocking down shots and all that stuff. And then other nights, he just seems like he's lost. So, I mean, the Raptors, they're not winning anything this year. They're probably not winning anything for the foreseeable future. And Masai Ujiri is at some point going to have to make some changes, some adjustments, try to kind of build this team and structure it in a way that can have some success. Toronto is not that far removed from winning a championship, and he does take big swings. He is a guy that likes to go out there, and if there's a piece or two or something out there, he'll take the swing. I mean, look at the Kawhi Leonard thing, right? He knew that was a one-year rental, but he made the move, and it paid off and winning a championship. And obviously, Toronto, they still have championship aspirations. They want to get to a point where they can win another championship. But the roster currently constructed, I don't really see it personally. I'm sure Raptor fans feel completely different. I've had discussions about the Raptors before, and the conversations, just wait. We're building this team. We're a team of the future, not a team now. And it's like, but yes, 3-and-D wings are important. Like size is important, but so is 3-point shooting, so is the mid-range, so is, scoring in general. And that's kind of been the problem with the Raptors. But the right move or two, or, free up some space to where maybe you could go get a free agent or something, all of a sudden you're in the conversation, right? Like there was a lot of talks about the Raptors maybe going and making a move, making a trade for Kevin Durant, it's like, hey, that may be the piece that puts him over the top, especially if Ujiri thinks that that's the move, right? So maybe in the offseason, maybe he makes a big push on him. But they have to figure out what are they going to do with VanVleet. What are they going to do with Gary Trent Jr.? And that's where the Lakers could come in, right? Take on some of these guys, especially if they want to come to the Lakers. Now, obviously, the great move would get an OG Anunoby. OG would be perfect. They got to pay him at some point, so there's a lot of questions about him. There was a lot of talks and rumors in the offseason about OG Anunoby being on the trade market and kind of fielding offers and stuff, and he was even linked to the Lakers at one point. Now, do the Lakers have enough to get him? Probably not. I think it just comes down to like what OG wants. Like if OG wants to go to the Lakers and he's like, man, like me, LeBron, Davis, that could be a spot for me. Like that could be a good place. Like if they have any opportunity to go OG Anunoby, you go get OG Anunoby, right? Now, personally, I don't think the Raptors, he's been great for them this year. I don't really see them making a move to unload him anymore. I think maybe it was a piece that they were highly considering at some point because, it's like an asset that they could dangle to teams. But also, he's young enough, he's talented enough that I just think if there's a bidding war, which there probably would be for a guy like him, I just think the Lakers would be out of that. like the last thing the Lakers want is to have to get into a bidding war with other teams because they just don't have the assets to go and acquire a guy like that. But if for whatever reason, if OG's like, hey, I want to be traded, or if you're going to trade me to the Lakers, I want to go to Lakers, that's the place I'll sign the extension with, whatever, then that's a place that could now become a viable option, right? The Lakers could now say, well, hey, he wants to come here, take the first, take whatever, and work out whatever deal. Maybe you could get him and Gary Trent in a deal and, maybe give it both first. Like in that case, I wouldn't mind giving up both first because you're getting a young 3-and-D shooter and you're getting a young 3-and-D, small forward, right? You get your two pieces perfectly fit next to LeBron, Davis, and maybe like Dennis Schroeder or whoever you want, Austin Reeves, whatever, right? And now you actually have like size, you have shooting, you have a little bit of everything. But I think personally, OG Anunoby may end up just being a pipe dream. And I just think other teams could come in and offer better packages than what the Lakers could offer for OG, especially like the Knicks. The Knicks seem like they really want to make a big splash. Like they seem like a team that really just, they want to do something to kind of like be like, oh, look what we got. And like OG could kind of fit in that spot. There were even reports that the Knicks are willing to offer like a Godfather package to Zach LaVine if he becomes available. So clearly the Knicks are trying to make a big splash. They have all these assets, all these draft picks. So again, it would be hard to get OG, but hey, we're in a player movement league. You get a guy that's like, hey, I want to be a Laker. All of a sudden, the conversation changes, and now the Lakers are in play for a player like that. But the most realistic destination or player destination and scenario would be Gary Trent. I've talked about him before recently, that I think Gary Trent could be a very viable option. He's still like 23 years old. Last year, he was like second or third all like in 30-point games. Like he had more 30-point games than like Kevin Durant, like James Harden. Like there's just like a whole list of like, star players that Gary Trent had more scoring games than, which I think is interesting. Like he's a guy that when he gets hot and he gets one, he just keeps going, right? He's a guy that's been great, but he's also kind of been the odd man out at times, right? Like he's coming off the bench now. He's not starting for the team. And, he just at times will get like 30 minutes and then other times he'll get like 15. So his playing minutes are kind of all over the place. Gary Trent's probably going to opt out. He's probably going to be seeking a nice contract. If you're the Lakers, wouldn't it make sense to go trade for him now, get his bird rights, be able to go over the cap for him, kind of reserve some of these players, and, get a young, 23-year-old 3-and-D style shooting guard. He would be a great complement around LeBron and Davis, plus whatever other pieces you can get and build and kind of put around these three. He's a guy that's young enough that you could have as like your shooting guard for the future. He's a guy that can get hot and be consistent. He's a guy that he's not just a 3-point shooter though. Like we've seen him be able to go and make plays, get to the basket, pull up in the mid range, stuff like that. He was just torching the Lakers the other day. So he would be a very viable piece. He'd be a great addition to a Lakers team. He's got good size for his position, for the type of shooting guard that he is. So I think he is the most realistic and possible trade that could happen, right? Like I see teams wanting Gary Trent, absolutely, but Gary Trent being a free agent, how many teams are going to give up pieces to go get Gary Trent and run the risk of him leaving, in the offseason and testing free agency? Also, again, kind of would have to be Gary Trent saying like, hey, I want to go to the Lakers. I want to play for the Lakers, because as soon as that happens, that basically makes every other team say, all right, we don't want Gary Trent. And then if you're Toronto, wouldn't you rather get something for Gary Trent than nothing, right? Wouldn't you rather get like, one first, or, even if it's a couple seconds or something, it's better to get something than just letting him walk and leave and getting nothing. And then that way you have some assets that you can maybe draft some more pieces and kind of put around your team, or you could use those assets to then go make a trade, maybe include those picks or whatever in a potential Kevin Durant trade in the offseason or whatever. Like just start recouping as many assets as possible. Maybe they even look to move Fred VanVleet to another team. Personally, I wouldn't, like if it came down to Fred or Gary Trent, I would rather have Gary Trent. Just the age, skill set, everything. He's a little more consistent at times, in my opinion, than Fred VanVleet. And I'm not really big on VanVleet as a point guard. I feel like he's almost better suited as like a combo guard, like more of like a spot up shooter. I think in that regard, like if you had like LeBron as the point and you had, Fred VanVleet kind of as like your shooting point guard, he can handle some ball duties, but LeBron's really your point guard. So, he's just kind of spotting up, knocking down threes. Then I think that could work. But ideally, I would want to go get Gary Trent because I think, again, his age, he's probably only going to get better. He's probably only going to improve. I think Darvin Ham could make him like a legit defender. He's already a solid defender. And look at what, Ham has been able to do with like guys like Russ. Turn Russ, who's never been really a defender, period, into like a real solid defender. Like he's one of the best defenders at his position also. And he's usually guarding bigger guys too, which is even more impressive. So Gary Trent, I could see him, really kind of embracing the role, being that scorer for the Lakers, a guy that just kind of alleviates and takes off the pressure of LeBron James and Anthony Davis, because that's something that I think the Lakers really need. The Lakers need a scorer. They absolutely need shooting, but they need a guy that can put the ball on the floor and get to the hoop or create shots for himself. And, again, not have to be set up by LeBron James and Anthony Davis or Russell Westbrook or whatever, right? And I just think Gary Trent might look at it as like, well, if I go to Lakers, I would have a starting role. I would have a big role because they really need a skill set like mine. So I would be in a position to where not only I'd probably get like ample playing time, I'd get to be a starter rather than coming off the bench. I'd still get paid. Like, I just think it would be a great, perfect scenario for Gary Trent if he wanted to go to the Lakers, right? And I think for the Lakers, it'd be a great, scenario because he's a guy that can play on the ball, he can play off the ball. He could do a little bit of everything for the Lakers. Again, 3-and-D type guy. And very likely you're unloading, Patrick Beverley and Kendrick Nunn or whatever to go get Gary Trent, right? You're not trading Russ in this deal. So you could probably still have assets to go and then make another big push if you needed to for Russell Westbrook. So it just kind of gives you options. But ideally, I would love to go get Gary Trent. I think he's the most realistic. Obviously, if there's any opportunity for you to get OG Anunoby, then that's the guy that I'd want. But I don't really see it. I don't think the Lakers are going to be able to grab him. But Gary Trent, I really do think could be a real option. And he's a guy that the Lakers are definitely going to be looking at in the offseason anyway. So why not just go get him now, get him, acclimated to the team now, and then kind of, now you can kind of figure out what are you going to do. Are you going to go all in and, maybe trade Russ and get some pieces that kind of help you for this season and next season? Or do you just, maybe try to work it out and re-sign him or extend him or do whatever? Figure out, it just gives you the options now, right? And it's always good to have like bird rights, stuff like that. So anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. Do you think the Toronto Raptors would be a viable option as a trade partner? It does make a lot of sense that they would, be trying to unload some of these guys, especially if, like Zach Lowe said, like if they don't have plans for these guys for the long term, like if Gary Trent isn't in their foreseeable future, then why not try to get something for him? And I just think that, I think there's a lot of teams that would want Gary Trent. I just don't think that those teams would, I don't think the bidding war would be as big as like OG Anunoby, right? Because OG Anunoby still got some time, right? And so where Gary Trent, like you trade for him and he leaves you next year, you basically gave up all these assets. So I think the Lakers could realistically go get a Gary Trent, and I think he would be a nice fit. But, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? However you feel, good, bad, ugly, somewhere in between. Let me know down in the comment section below.